All right, welcome to Law Talk, sponsored by the Kaylor Law Group in Mcmann, PA. My name is David Kaylor. I'm a criminal defense attorney. My office is located at 3001 Bartow Road in Lakeland. That's just north of Edgewood Drive. So if you need a criminal defense attorney, I don't think that this particular listening audience has probably gotten any type of trouble since last week where they're going to need a criminal defense attorney, Mark.
But they know somebody who may have.
Okay, you know, it could happen to anybody. Give me a call at 668-7223. That's 668-7223. Once again, my name is David Kaylor of the Kaylor Law Group, and my World Wide Web address is kaylorlaw.com.
Did you really just call it the World Wide Web?
Yeah, does that date me?
It does.
Anyway, when you look at my website, Mark, you will see that I do criminal defense and some personal injury law, but you will see that we do not do family law. However, I know somebody that does.
That's me, Mark Mcmann, Mcmann, PA. Same location, 3001 Bartow Road. Anything regarding family law, again, if you don't really know what that means, it's divorce, it's adoption, it's alimony, child support, child custody, or time sharing. Give me a call at 863-393-9010 or visit me at McMahonLaw.com.
Oh, McMahonLaw.com. Do you actually have a website?
I actually do. I have a website. I got a desk. I got these pens that I use. It's really it's upscale.
Well, listen, we're going to come back in the next week or two to talk about our political predictions and which ones were right.
They didn't fare too well.
Yeah, we did all right. I did a little bit better than you. Not terribly much better. But I want to talk about one in particular right now, and then we'll move on. I want to congratulate Catherine Cumby on her election to the circuit bench.
Yeah, she worked her tail off.
She sure did. She conducted a campaign with classic dignity and a level of professionalism worthy of the position that she sought and won. As you might imagine, I was rooting for the other guy since he's my uncle, Mark Kaylor, but I have no qualms at all about appearing in her courtroom. She is going to work very hard for the citizens of the 10th Judicial Circuit, and I know she's going to do a fantastic job.
I hear that.
All right, let's move on. We have in the palatial WLKF studio today Representative Ben Alpritton, who is a state representative over in the Hardee County area. He's also got some of Polk County, and currently he has Highlands County, but you're going to be switching that out for DeSoto County come the first of the year. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's right.
I got that right. Well, Ben was elected 2 years ago. He is originally from Hardee County. He lives in Wauchula with his wife and 3 children. He graduated from Florida Southern College, graduated from high school in, what, 1986?
That's it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You and I graduated the same year, but you're older than I am. You're my elder.
You wouldn't know by looking at you.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's
I mean, just for the record.
That's not nice. Anyway, I need to be respectful towards my elders. Mr. Alpritton, thank you for coming on our show. We really appreciate it. Folks, if you have any questions for Ben Alpritton, during the course of the next 45 minutes to an hour, you're going to find out how very fortunate we are to have somebody of his character up in Tallahassee. Feel free to call and ask any questions at 682-1430. That's 682-1430. Mark, I'll let you begin.
Well, I did have a question about Florida Southern. When did you graduate from there, and what did you get your degree in?
Graduated from there in 1990. Well, actually, first, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to come spend some time with you and be able to share some issues and some concerns and thoughts with the folks out there that are listening.
Both of them?
Especially with the storm, right?
Hopefully, yes. But thank you very much. I appreciate that.
That's my pleasure.
I graduated from Florida Southern in 1990 with a Bachelor of Science degree in citrus and business. So those were good times. Spent a lot of time around Lake Hollingsworth. And
did you live on campus?
No, I actually did not. No, I commuted.
Okay.
Commuted.
I mean,
spent a lot of time working.
You drove the tractor all the way up from Hardee County?
Yeah, the tractors will run about 26 miles an hour. I mean, I could get there in a couple hours. Yeah. It's not bad. Had a radio in it.
All right.
Well, I mean, that was a big deal. I went there too a few years later, and business citrus. That was a big major. I think it still is. What did you want to do with that? I mean, what was it that you wanted to follow through?
Well, that's a good question. Actually, I was the first one in my family to get a 4-year college degree. So we are in the agricultural business, part of what we do, in a portfolio of family-held companies. We have a large family that works together. We own citrus groves. We provide grove care for other folks, horticultural consulting. We're now in the insurance business and some other things. Just have a little new high-tech startup. But I've always wanted to be close to agriculture and close to the land. And when I was given the opportunity to come back and work with my dad in our business, it's what I wanted to do. So I knew that I needed to understand horticulture and citriculture well to be able to hit the ground running. But then second of all, the business principles on the secondary part of the major were very important. Macroeconomics, microeconomics, finance, accounting, those types of things. So it was really just a well-rounded opportunity for me to enter into the business world. and hit the ground running. So I love my time there. It's a beautiful campus, and certainly enjoyed everything about it.
It's one of the most beautiful campuses in the United States. There was a poll that just came out. They won that award again. Yeah, they really. Yeah.
Well, it's a couple years in a row, isn't it? I mean,
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, they keep it up real nice, and
Yes.
of course the architecture, that whole Frank Lloyd Wright thing. So you graduate from there, and you run your business. And I have two questions really. The first one is, what got you involved in wanting to be state representative and eventually win that and get that?
Okay, that certainly is a good question, fair question. I know that's on the minds of a lot of folks out there when they're talking to people that are elected. I never really was interested in politics. The truth is that I've been taught since I was very young that we're supposed to serve, be interactive with other folks, look for opportunities to serve, help bring solutions to your community, draw folks together, build consensus, and do all those things. So I was spending my time on several local boards of grower organizations and just serving on every opportunity that I could. Baxter Troutman held this seat prior to my taking it, and Baxter was in my office one day in Wauchula, and I asked him specifically who was interested in taking the seat, because my goal was I need to make sure to get to them, build a relationship with them, make sure that the ag and the business climate is monitored up there, that we build some consensus around good ideas. And he looked at me and he said, well, what about you? And I honestly laughed, and then we went to go have lunch. And I told my wife about it that night, and she kind of laughed too. And then right before bed, she looked over at me and she said, you know, Ben, we can't discount what God may have for us. So then it became a reality.
And why not? I mean,
Why not?
Every conversation that everybody, I mean, nobody ever just, well, some people plan on running for elective office from the
Time they're
fourth
5
grade.
years old, right?
Yeah, but your average person, the citizen politician, which is what our nation needs, are the people that are out there running a business, raising a family, and they say, now it's my turn to get up there to see what I can do. I mean, it's an all-American story.
Well, maybe so. I think it's the Alpritton family story. So that's that reconciles very closely for me. So we got in the race, talked to folks. Of course, we prayed about it a lot. Sought wisdom, I guess I should say, from folks that were involved in the process before. What should our expectations be? What in the world do you do for a campaign? I had no clue whatsoever. And we used a local consultant, Twyla Ely, just a fantastic woman. She is still today a good friend of mine. She was the mother hen of the operation. I needed a lot of guidance, and she was always very gracious. So we started knocking on doors, and we started making phone calls, and we started raising funds to run a campaign. And at the end of the day, we proved successful, and it's been fantastic ever since. We've been very grateful.
Now, you had a primary opponent. I think it was Siobhan Bacchus.
Yes, sir.
And did you have a general election opponent?
No, sir. There was a write-in,
Yeah.
so it was closed out in the primary.
Well, how'd you do?
Barely won.
Okay.
Was it a close call in the general, or did you win it pretty hand? What was the final tally in the primary?
It was 80-20.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
80-20.
That's impressive.
But I think the biggest reason, I've got to say this too, I think the biggest reason is that we worked incredibly hard. We knocked on thousands of doors. I don't know how many phone calls we made, but there were hundreds, if not thousands, and we worked very, very hard. So I think the process still rewards that.
Let me ask you about that. There's this talk that there's this corrosive influence of big money in some of these local elections, and it's good to hear somebody like you talk about, retail politics still matter. There is no substitute for knocking on doors. How'd you find that experience to be?
Well, I believe this. I believe that you're right, and that the average person out there, and quite frankly, I think I'm an average person. I really am. I work to stay there and build boundaries in my life to stay there every day. I think the average person, when we are knocking on doors and giving speeches at Rotary clubs and those types of things, folks have good discernment. And I'm certainly not saying that I'm anything special, but I just want to be me. And I think people out there see it, they understand it, they relate to it, they're excited about it. And when somebody just plain old Ben walks to their house and knocks on the door and say, "Can I talk with you about policy ideas?" They love it. Mm-hmm. And so I do think grassroots, at the end of the day, yes, it does take money to run a campaign, but the grassroots effort, especially at the state house level, makes all the difference. People have good discernment, and I value that.
All right, folks, we've got to take a break, and we'll be right back with Representative Ben Alpritton.
Hello, I'm Mark Mcmann. I started Mcmann, PA after serving 10 years as a United States Army JAG Corps officer, as a military lawyer. That experience instilled in me certain attributes, including dedication, loyalty, sacrifice, hard work. I have made those attributes the cornerstone, the foundation of Mcmann, PA. If you're going through a divorce, a paternity action, a child custody battle, or perhaps a child support battle, call us at 863-393-9010 or visit us at mcmannlaw.com. We are with you, honest, hardworking, and loyal every step of the way.
The Law Talk, sponsored by the Kaylor Law Group in Mcmann, PA. My name is David Kaylor. I am a criminal defense attorney, born and raised here in Imperial Polk County. My office is located in Lakeland. My primary office is located in Lakeland on Bartow Road. We also have a satellite office in Winter Haven, where my brother Matthew and I were born and raised. So if you need a criminal defense attorney, give us a call at 668-7223. I have the privilege of practicing law with one of the finest attorneys, not even in Polk County, in the entire Central Florida area, Mr. Mark Mcmann.
The entire world.
The entire world.
Thanks, Dave. That's very kind. You know, they did our plug, man. They did our plug at 5:18 today.
Who was that?
The Kaylor Law Group plug. They advertised us during our show.
That's
the one time of the week
Dan.
they'll do it.
Yeah, they advertise our radio show during our radio
That's the only time you'll hear it all week.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Mark, tell them what you do for a living.
Family law, as I said at the top of the hour, anything regarding family law. It's divorces, adoption, alimony, child support, time sharing. Give me a call at 863-393-9010.
Let me ask you a question, Representative Alpritton. Would you agree that 393-9010 does not sound like a real telephone number?
It sounds real enough to me, and I'm looking him in the eye. I don't think he'd tell a lie.
Nope, absolutely not.
They did. I mean, if you spend a lot of time in Lakeland, 668.
It's becoming more popular. I will say, I was a trendsetter. 393 was not as heard of, but now I'm hearing a lot of it.
It sounds like you're giving out your cell phone.
No. You're framing it wrong, David. Here's the deal. I mean, it's a new exchange because the community's growing.
Yes.
I mean, that at the end of the day, so we'll take as many new exchanges
Mark
as
is
we can.
the future of Lakeland, is what you're saying. All right, let's get back
lawyers
to the
and more lawyers after this.
we need more lawyers.
Couple of farmers, but go ahead.
Go on, Mark. Ask
I
questions.
had a question for you. This is the question. It kind of follows up on where we left off. You go to college, you go to Florida Southern, you get your business degree. Certain principles you learn from that. You mentioned macroeconomics, you mentioned microeconomics, and of course there's certain principles that you take from that you apply to real life business on a day on, day off, or daily basis. You end up going to government. How do you apply those principles? How do you apply those common sense principles to government?
That is an important topic, and I appreciate you bringing the question up. You know, here's when you back away and you look at the college education that I received, there are a couple of key principles, and it may not have been the title of any classes or any of that, but just key common sense principles that you apply in life and in your own business, or quite frankly, I think maybe even more so in government, and that is that you measure everything. You know, when you talk about statistics and economics and those types of things, they're based on logical measures, statistically valid measures, so that you know where you are, you know where you want to go, and how to get there. So you can apply those same things into government. The basic premise of we can borrow ourselves out of debt, it completely illogical. Right. But when you talk about microeconomics or macroeconomics or any kind of economics at all, then when you sit here and look at the business model of the world, you can't do that. You can't borrow yourself out of debt. So the application of those 30,000-foot view perspectives that a college education can give you, they certainly apply in the government. So those are just a couple.
Well, I mean, how you say this is a new concept that I maybe starting to pay attention to it the last few years, but this whole concept of borrowing your way out of debt, is that something that's been around for a long time? When you heard it the last few years, were you just scratching your head? I mean, where'd that come from?
Still scratching my head. And it feels like to me, I don't know how long it's been around. My suspicion is when you go back and look at the history of America and the economic history of America, there have always been economic challenges and downturns. It's perfectly predictable that it's going to be cyclical, right? It's going to cycle around, and you're going to have ups and you're going to have downs. The 1830s, the 1870s, the 19-teens, the 1930s, the 1970s and 80s, and now here we are again. And then what we have to do is we have to figure out when government costs more than you're bringing in, what you're really saying is if you believe in borrowing money to cover the debt, is that you can borrow yourself out of debt. And I don't believe that. I think what we have to do is we have to take a look at the revenue that we have coming in. Now, we're very blessed, just for the record, at the state level, we have a balanced budget amendment, and I wish Washington would do the same thing. But if you if you have X amount of money coming in, then you have to do the hard work to prioritize what you're going to spend that money on. And that is, of course, different than the topic I know that's coming up on how we spend our money. But the fact is, the basic premise of borrowing more money to create jobs and build infrastructure that really just raises your long-term cost of maintenance in the government sector is all about growing government.
Well, Mark, I want to you mentioned that, and you say it as if this is a recent affliction. I mean, this has been something.
Keynesian. It's Keynesian.
It's but this has been going on for a long time, and it certainly went on during the 2000s. And what I'm
doesn't make it right.
Well, it doesn't make it right. No, it doesn't make it right. But I actually was having a conversation with Representative Alpritton earlier in the day, and I hear people like Ben or Dennis talk about the concept of fiscal responsibility. I buy into it. I completely buy into it. Not so much with some of these guys that were up there spending money like drunken sailors back in the 2000s when we actually had the money. I mean, there is an argument to be made that some government when an economic engine seizes up, that you need something to prime the pump. How much of that should be or how it should be spent is a different argument. But back in the 2000s, we had plenty of money sloshing around. We had no reason to be running deficits, and so I just think it's important that we not try to make the argument that this is purely the fault of one party or another, because we'll never get anything done. There's plenty of blame to go around for this.
I couldn't agree with that anymore, David. And I think that what we need is we need to take a very close view and see what we can do to cut costs. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the measure that's going to make the difference in the long run. And neither party has done a great job of doing that over the last, good gosh, the last 25 or 30 years. So I think you're right.
During the last couple of years, we've had some very difficult fiscal times, and to listen to some people in government, it was like the world was going to come to an end. And I suspect that we've had some hardships in local government and some hardships in state government, but it seems to me that everything is still running pretty darn well, considering that we've had our revenue, or what's the term that they use?
The revenue stream.
The revenue stream for government has been cut so drastically, it leads me to believe that we had a lot of fat there that we probably didn't need.
Well, if you're looking for me to comment on that, I'd like to trust my local governments. I've worked very closely with the county commission here in Polk, and
I was talking about state government too, Ben.
Well, yeah, but my point is that you talk about fat. There is the entire system works together.
Right.
The federal level spends money at the state level, and the state level spends money at the local level, and the local level has their own funding sources, so they all have their separate budgets. The fact is that what I think is happening is that maybe you could call it fat, but I think that as human beings, sometimes we fall into traps. We kind of get conformed to where we are today and how things are moving, and we maybe lose the desire not to be critical, but lose the desire to be innovative and work on cost-cutting efficiency measures. So something like this can be healthy. Right, and I believe what's happened is that now these local governments, and I know that state government, and I certainly wish that the federal government would take a look at how to build efficiencies into the system, so that if you're mowing the roadways X amount of times, well, maybe what you do is you mow them one less or two less, but you take the pro rata share out of that, so that you're not taking the money away from the most needy, the most vulnerable in society, but you can still operate the parks and operate things and pare something back to some extent incrementally.
You mentioned, Mark, the experience of him going to college and getting the education in macro and microeconomics. I think an even greater experience in terms of translating that to working in government is running a small business, running multiple small businesses, because at the end of the day, your ledger's got to balance out, and that you can't have everything that you want, and but boy, there's no substitute for that when it comes to, as far as I'm concerned. And there's plenty of great people that make careers in public service, but there is something to be said about the small business owner, because they are the backbone of our economy. When they get up there, they understand that this is real money we're talking about.
Well, I think they understand, yes, that it is real money that they're talking about, but more importantly, it's not our money. This money, the tax revenue, is not Ben Albritton's money, Representative Ben Albritton's money, Representative anybody else's money. It is the public's money, and it comes from their hard work, It comes from all of those things. So the perspective that we need to take going forward very, very clearly is it is not our money, it's other people's money, and that couples with that, it makes the system even better, in my opinion.
Do you notice a difference at all between, and without naming names, just a sense of those representatives who have been in the private sector for a period of time and have worked and maybe owned a small business, and those who have either been in government or not had that exposure? Do you notice any difference at all?
It is as clear as night and day.
Wow. All right, folks, on that note, I'll take a break and be right back.
I'm Brent Gohagan of Gohagan, PA. If you are a business owner, you have undoubtedly had that moment when you realize, I wish I had someone trained to help me, guide me in the drafting of that contract, or you have been concerned about the prospect of your business being sued over something frivolous or needing guidance in a business dispute regarding some negligence or intentional action on the part of another business or individual. We are here to navigate you through this. We care because we know as a small business it matters to you. Visit us at Gohagan, PA.
Talk sponsored by the Kaylor Law Group and Mcmann, PA. Let's get right back to it. Ben, at the break, right before the break, you were, as a small business owner, you were talking about, not speaking disapprovingly of your fellow legislators, but there's just a different mindset between the folks that have been out there and run a small business versus those who have only signed the back of a paycheck and never had to sign the front. Expound on that a little bit more.
Well, the first thing that I want to say is that I have a huge amount of respect for both groups of people, because to some extent, if somebody has spent their lifetime serving the public as a fireman or a police officer or something like that, then there's a huge amount of respect that should be allocated to them. But you can't expect them to understand what it's like not to make a payroll and have to go borrow the money from a bank to make payroll and figure out what in the world went wrong. And the flip side is you also cannot expect a small business owner that goes through those struggles but have never had to have a gun pointed at them to understand. So we have to be reasonable about the discussion, so that we try to put ourselves in the shoes of other people and then find some middle ground so that we can try to figure out what is a good business-friendly policy that can be a win-win, or at least a partial win for everybody in the process. So yes, there is a distinct difference between the two. I think it's fair not to be critical. We need to figure out how to build consensus.
I want to segue, because you did bring up, you were mentioning law enforcement or firefighters. We do have quite a bit of folks in law enforcement that do listen to this show, and I have tremendous respect for the enormously difficult job of all our first responders. They run towards those situations that the rest of us, would really think twice about before we
run away from.
Yeah, we'd want to run away from it. And I am concerned. I consider myself a very staunch fiscal conservative, but I am concerned that. And I've spoken with a lot of folks in law enforcement, younger guys in their 20s and early 30s, that are thinking twice about making a career in public service in law enforcement, that sort of thing, because the benefit package, sort of what they bargained for going in, is going to change. Where are we with respect to that, and what are your views on that? I mean, the guy that's a police officer for 30 years has a pretty nice retirement package waiting on him when he gets done, and there's some talk about getting rid of the defined benefits and going more into a 401k style program, and I'm concerned that we're going to lose a lot of these good people if we do that.
Okay, let's divide it up into three categories. Number one, I think it's fair if somebody has served for 30 years and they are retired or looking toward retirement, they've had certain promises made to them. And I think that if we're going to be responsible as a society and a governing body, then we should make sure and fulfill those promises, because they can't go back and change where they've been. They are where they are, and they've banked on this their entire life. The second would be the new folks coming in. And you're right, we need to make sure that we have smart, quite frankly, brave, dedicated folks that are going to be serving the public like this. Anytime you have an economic downturn, anytime you do it, then it becomes difficult. What we need to do is think about it on a long-term average. So what we know is this: an economic downturn is going to happen, and we're in the middle of it now, but we also know history has told us we're going to cycle out. So if we have to make cuts today, now think about this, if we have to make cuts today with a balanced budget amendment to take care of education, take care of Medicaid, take care of all the things that we need to take care of in a state budget, and there has to be changes in these defined benefit packages today, we should keep track of what happens. And when things turn around and we get to where the economy is moving better again, these promises have been made. So let's have the public discussion about how we might be able to enhance those packages. So over that 30-year time horizon, the chances of there being a massive economic downturn several times in a 30-year window, history has shown us it probably is not going to happen. So we can look at this thing on long term and work to keep our promises going forward. But the third part of this, and we've hedged around this a little bit, the third part of this is having that discussion about how we spend our money and making sure that we don't have turkeys in the budget. And not just because maybe our governor believes that funding a particular project is a turkey, but the process by which we spend our money and produce more accountability, more transparency so that we get a bigger bang for the buck.
What do you mean by that? I mean, specifically.
Oh,
You say
okay.
that and it's this broad, but getting down to the nitty-gritty, when you say that, what are you talking about?
Okay, what I'm talking about is, I mean, as an example, you can have contracts that are written today. Well, let me back up even further. From a, say, 15,000 feet, you have the Department of Management Services underneath the governor's executive office. They are called the DMS. That is their acronym. The DMS is, they're responsible for crafting and executing the contracts for the purchases the state makes. And then underneath the chief financial officer, there is a division called the Department of Financial Services. They are DFS. They are the checkbook, right? You can't bring the two together because anybody that's run a large company knows that's how you get yourself into trouble. But you can produce some transparency and accountability between those two so that you have this checkbook that is just basically, you can't just write a check without some accountability. We don't in our lives every day. We make sure we get what we're going to pay for. And then the DMS, the contract execution side, we can make sure that those contracts don't have things in them like up to clauses that we talked about before that give huge variability and huge opportunities for somebody to take advantage of the system.
What is an up to clause?
An up to clause would be if you were going to buy up to 10 desks for $10,000. Okay? So we budget at the state level, the line item will be $10,000 into, say, the Department of Education.
Can't go above that. Up to
Can't
that,
go above
that's
that, right? And you can buy up to 10 desks. So what if you decide to buy, what if you figure out you only need 6? You're still line item budgeted for 10.
They're going to find a way to spend that $10,000.
Well, I think human nature is going to be very difficult to get around that.
Yeah.
Okay, because they're going to want, because we want people in the education system. Here's the problem. You want people in the education system that are interested in doing what's excellent for the kids, right? And if they believe they can buy some better desks for that $10,000 than buying 10 desks, then if they're compassionate for the kids, they may feel like they want to do that, and God bless them. That's awesome. But when you look at it as a fiscal program, these up to clauses open the books so that people can make choices that may not be good.
What's the alternative, though? I mean,
The alternative is
micromanage how many desks they buy. I mean, don't we want to give them some discretion at the local level?
I would agree that to be true to some extent. But if you read the contracts that I read, there's a huge amount of variability in those contracts. Maybe what you would do is you would say instead of up to 10,000, up to 10 desks for $10,000, arbitrary numbers. You know, maybe what you would do is you would say that you could buy between 8 and 10 desks for $10,000, and you know that takes some of the flexibility of the contract away. But that's $10,000 and 10 desks. We're talking about billions of dollars that's spent at the state level.
That's a
So
smaller scale. But
yeah, you take that concept and you apply it, then you know, gosh, could we save $1 billion? I mean, Florida Tax Watch has dozens of ideas. Fourth quarter dumping, prime example, the spend it or lose it mentality.
Tell us about that.
Quarter, yeah, fourth quarter dumping.
Fourth quarter dumping. So you have 4 quarters in a year, 4 3-month quarters in a year, and the money is allocated to spend, you know, for a year's time. Let's say that you have $10,000 to spend on desks for a year, and you get to the 4th quarter and you have not purchased any desks. Well, the truth is that if you don't spend that $10,000, what happens?
You don't get it next year.
Right.
Or it's cut back
That's right.
significantly.
But you can't look at somebody in the Department of Education and say that's the wrong way to look at it. And you certainly can't look at allocating the $10,000 to try to solve a need and say, well, you can't try to solve a need. What you have to do is figure out a way so that you baseline the expenditures. so that the people at the agencies or the local level don't feel like they have to use fourth quarter spending. There's a baseline every single year that's carried forward into the budgeting process, so there's a certain amount of variability built into that so that they know where the boundaries are. And then once you start doing that, you build a baseline over a period of 5, 7, 10, 15 years, then what you're going to find is that your costs are going to streamline, and then you can continue to look for other opportunities to save some money. But they don't feel like if they don't spend it, they're going to lose it. You've got to take that away from them.
Basically saying you're going to get a certain amount next year no matter what you do, so there's not in a way.
Well, you got to be careful, but you can't bind future legislators, but you could do it on 2-year cycles. Yeah, you've got to look, and I don't pretend to have all the answers. But what I know is these are legitimate problems because of human nature. I have them, you have them,
sure.
Everybody has them. We just need to have the discussion about how we're spending our money, and those ideas will come up. They'll come up. People with common sense will come up.
Having been up there, though, and this is common sense. I mean, these are common sense solutions that you're suggesting to these problems, and these problems that are built into the process. Have you asked the question, or at least come to the conclusion, why has this not been done before?
We might want to wait on that answer.
All right, we'll
to
take a
say, well,
break
I think
on
we
that
got a
one.
break coming up
Yeah,
here.
some time to think about it.
No, I know the answer. It's going to take more than just a few
All right,
seconds.
think about it.
We'll be right back. Are you Talk sponsored by the Kaylor Law Group in Mcmann, PA. All right, we have a caller. Caller, what is your question or comment, and your name if you want to give it to us? All right. Well, thank you so much for the call, Representative Alpritton. What are your thoughts on that? It's obviously a hot topic.
The question, for purposes of the video audience, is that what is your position? What are your thoughts on changing the stand your ground law?
Correct. Thank you, first of all, for calling in. I appreciate you reaching out to us, and I think it's a very good question, especially in light of what's going on today. I am not in favor of changing the stand your ground law, and really that's very simple.
Why?
I believe that we as a society need to make sure that there's value held in the Second Amendment. There's value held in our ability to defend ourselves. There's value held for me as a father to be able to defend my family. And if there is a problem with that, then the court system can sort it out. We'll figure all that out. At the end of the day, my ability to defend myself is no different than my ability to defend my private property. Quite frankly, it's probably even more so important, and especially as it relates to my family. And I feel like it is a God-given right for me to be able to do that.
Well, I disagree with you respectfully on that one, Representative Alpritton. I think the stand your ground law was superfluous. We have very strong self-defense laws in the state of Florida. The difference between the stand your ground law and the self-defense is that the stand your ground law allows people to place themselves into a situation. There is no duty to retreat as there was before. In the Castle Doctrine, you don't have to retreat in your own home. You never have to retreat.
Castle Doctrine was before.
Yeah, the Castle Doctrine was before. In your own home, you don't have to retreat. Someone breaks in your house, you can shoot them. But if you find yourself in a situation when you're in a parking lot, before the stand your ground law came about, in a parking lot at Publix and a couple of thugs jump you, you could have shot them dead right there on the spot before. The difference now, as some might say with respect to the stand your ground law, is that we're allowing people like drug dealers that place themselves into situations that they have no business being in the first place, and we're giving them a type of immunity that was never anticipated. I'm not sure should we toss it if we should toss it out. Maybe perhaps mend it, don't end it. But we had very strong self-defense laws in the state of Florida prior to this. And I think if you talk to a lot of folks in law enforcement, and certainly a lot of the various state attorneys throughout the state, they believe that the stand your ground law has fixed a problem that really didn't exist. But we can agree to disagree.
I'm of the opinion that any time that you have a knee-jerk reaction, it seems to be of a one situation, one highlighted situation, to where everybody jumps on it and uses that as the reason to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Well, but there have been other examples other than the Trayvon Martin. There are
then you got Al Sharpton out there yelling about it. I instantaneously.
Let's use some guys. Let's use some common sense on this, and I think that you probably do have valid points on both sides, but at the end of the day, Mark, if you can't, in my opinion, you can't take a law and throw it out for a 1% error rating. I mean, you really can't do that because you're still 99% effective.
But Representative, I think most and I'm not. Trust me, okay. I'm not a big fan of of that idiot Al Sharpton. You're messing with me, Mark. I can't stand that guy.
I know.
But there are many. That's the one that's getting most of the press. There are many other instances of the abuse of this particular statute. And I just think, and I agree, that we should not be tossing, we should not put laws in place based upon one unfortunate event, and we shouldn't take them out based upon one unfortunate event. But there's certainly nothing wrong with taking a better look at this particular law.
Right.
I can agree with that. I certainly can. Things evolve over time. Now, some things that haven't evolved is your ability to defend yourself, and you know, the Second Amendment, certainly I would protect that to the very end.
Absolutely, and so would I. But that's
also,
not going to change if you get rid of the stand your ground.
But you can't. But you also, though, you have to be careful. Just to reiterate, in my opinion, you have to be careful to make a change on something for a very, very small minority. And I'm sure I don't practice law, David. So I'm sure that you could share with me many other challenges that have happened in this process. Would I be willing to have a public discussion about it? The answer is yes, but here's why. It's not because that I'd be willing to change my perspective. I would be willing to be open-minded, but the First Amendment gives us the ability to have a public discussion about challenges such as this. They're not supposed to be racially charged. They're not supposed to be personally charged. It's supposed to be where the best ideas win. That's what the First Amendment is about. So am I willing to have public debate about it? Absolutely. But I doubt very seriously I'm going to change my opinion. I feel pretty confident that I feel good about private property.
Listen, the reasonable people can disagree about this particular statute, and I'm as self-defense oriented as the next guy, and I'm a big proponent of the Second Amendment. I just have seen some abuses that I think were unnecessary, because we have, especially in a place like Polk County and Hardy County and Highlands County, we don't have any problems with self-defense in those counties. Now maybe down in Broward County and some of those other places where Mark hails from, that
well, I was like 11.
You're from Broward County?
11 years old, I left.
All good things come from Broward, right?
No.
All good things come from Broward.
But anyway, there's some good people that came up with this law, and there's some good people that don't think it was a great idea. But we'll have to wait and see how it goes. But you know what I think is striking, Representative, is that there's nothing wrong with talking about it and talking with the people that you may disagree with. There's nothing wrong with hearing them out. There's the guy that happens to disagree with you is not a bad citizen. He's not a bad American. He
Absolutely
could be as patriotic as you.
You're absolutely right. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's a battle of ideas.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to do it respectfully, responsibly, treat each other with kindness and generosity, and battle the idea.
You don't see a lot of that going on in national politics right now, do you?
Not in national politics. I would say it is refreshing that it happens in Tallahassee quite a bit.
So one of the things we asked about, and we have just a couple minutes for you to answer, I said, hey, you're not the first guy to have thought about all of these changes, common sense changes to what's been built into the structure up there. Why has it not been done before? You got about 2.5 minutes.
I think, number one, the urgency of the economic climate causes it to be looked at just from a human nature, being stimulated to figure out how we're going to make each dollar stretch more. So this is a bit of a unique time. So the human nature part of it. Second of all, the system itself certainly is influenced by the lobby corps and major special interests. So, you know, there are companies today, just to put it right out there on the chopping block, the fact of the matter is that there are some companies here in the state that have a lobbyist, and they buy a lot of goods or sell a lot of goods or do whatever. They exchange a lot of money with the state. So they're going to be very protective, and I don't look at I don't look at that as being necessarily dirty or deceitful. It's about doing a job. My job is, when I go to Tallahassee, is to figure out how to spend every single dollar as effectively as possible. I want it to be so thin I can almost see through it. That's how thinly. So I don't look at the lobby corps and these companies that do business with the state critically. Let me make sure I'm very clear about that. But somewhere there's an interchange. Our idea of what is transparent and accountable and their idea of what's transparent and accountable, they may intersect somewhere, and we can have the conversation there. But I think that's part of the challenge we have.
Have you found that the power of the lobbyists has increased as a result of the term limits?
Well, I've only been there 2 years, and many of the lobbyists are past members in the House of the Senate. But I will tell you, a lot of the old-timers will say that the answer to that question will be yes. And I suspect at the end of, if God willing, I get elected 2 more times and get to serve a full 8 years, then I'm going to see that I believe the answer will be yes. Yes.
And the reason for that, give me an example as to why you think that is. Because term limits was such feel-good legislation. I think that the consensus that we're moving towards is that perhaps if you want to have term limits, which I understand why people would want, that we probably should have given these folks some more time up there. I mean, just the absurdity of you having to pick who the Speaker of the House is going to be the first 6 weeks that you arrive there. Figuring out who the Speaker of the House is going to be 8 years down the road is sort of is emblematic of that issue.
Okay, I'll give you some specifics. What I think is that when everything that we do in Tallahassee, everything that you do in your business, and everything that a police officer, or a firefighter, or a school teacher is designed around relationships. It takes time to build quality relationships. If you're a person that builds boundaries in your life so that you aren't going out partying every night, or you're not doing whatever you're going to do, you're serious about the job that you've been elected to do, then the fact.
Music.
Okay, well, the fact of the matter is that it's about relationships. Whoever's there the longest builds the strongest relationships, and they have the upper hand.
There you go. All right, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in to Law Talk, and especially
you,
I want to thank
Representative
Representative Albritton
No,
for
thanks,
coming on.
guys.
We had a great time. Thank you so
Pleasure.
much.
We'll have you again. Have a
Yes,
good
sir.
week.
You too.